What's going on, guys? I'm Matt Davis with the Upland Experience by Final Rise. Wanted to create a video today and talk about one of my favorite early season 28 gauge hunting loads. To start out, I kind of want to preface this video and kind of let you know I really nerd out on this stuff. Reloading for me, it's not a necessity, it's more of a passion and something that I thoroughly enjoy. Beautiful September day right now. We got some breeze blowing in the garage here, but anyways, I really enjoy this stuff. And so the whys, the hows, and the thought process behind a lot of this stuff may be a little bit different, maybe a little bit against the grain, but this is really based on my experience. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. There's nothing wrong with shooting factory loads. I shoot factory loads plenty of times. But when it comes to my 28 gauge and my 410, just based off of ammo availability and cost, reloading has become very advantageous. So we'll jump into it here. So the particular load that we're going to be working on today is a 1 ounce 28 gauge load. Now, when you say 1 ounce and 28 gauge in the same sentence, there's probably a couple guys that are raising eyebrows and saying, hey, just shoot a 20 gauge. And I will say a 20 gauge is, you know, far and away the most versatile gauge in any direction. You can ramp them up reloading, you can tame them down, but I do like the 28 gauge. Just for the size, the scale of the gun, the weight of the gun, how nice they are to carry in the field. And it's not too much on a bird during early season hunting, especially when you're hunting over good pointing dogs. Most of the shots that we're taking on birds, they're under 30 yards. I don't think a lot of people realize how far 30 plus yards or 40 yards really actually is. And so I'm really into very dense patterns and small shot at very high velocities. I want to create forgiveness in that load. And anytime it comes to grouse hunting, whether you're hunting them in the mountains, you're hunting them on the prairies, you're hunting them in the desert, wherever that might be, having a forgiving pattern can be very, very advantageous. So 1 ounce 28 gauge load. This particular load has been tested, it is proven, but I will always preface anything when it comes to reloading. Do your own homework. Do not take my word for it. I am not responsible if you screw something up and have a bad experience. That's not on me. I'm going to share information that I know works, it's been tested, and it's good to go. So take that with a grain of salt as we dive into this. First, we're going to go over the components here. This load can be done in a Cheddite or Fiocchi hole. I have a lot of Fiocchi holes just because a lot of the target loads that I shoot over the summer kind of become my reloading holes for hunting later in the season. And 28 gauge Fiocchi, very, very common shell you can find in a lot of different places. So I've got 25 of those here. I like to make sure that I'm just batching and doing things in groups at a time, and that I can keep that box together. If something was to happen, I was able to identify a problem with the load, or I did something wrong, I wasn't paying attention, I would basically just throw that box away, right? It's not going to all be mixed in together. So got 25 holes here. The particular powder we're going to be running is little gun. I shoot a lot of little gun. Long shot's a great powder, but for this particular load, it does call for 29 grains of little gun. The wad that we're going to be shooting for this particular load, and really only one of the only wads for 1 ounce loads, are the ballistic products, the heavy 28s or the Magnum 28s, whatever you want to call those. Great little wad, very, very tall, but it's going to be able to protect your gun and obviously have the load capacity to have a 1 ounce load of shot. The shot size that we're shooting is, oh, this weighs a lot, as small as it is number 7s. This is the extra Magnum shot or whatever, the extra hard shot. This is from, I think, Precision Reloading is where I bought this. These are from Ballistic Products website. So those are kind of the main two websites where I get most of my stuff. I really like the 7s. You know, the difference between a 7 and a 7.5 isn't super crazy, but I'm reloading, so I like being able to just test a bunch of different stuff out. 7s have been fantastic for me. I'm able to get a lot of shot into a 1 ounce load, and again, that comes back to being able to have a very wide and dense pattern that doesn't have any holes in it. It doesn't take a lot of pellets to kill a bird. It really only takes a couple of them. But if I can have more pellets, I'm kind of, I think of it as a hornet's nest, right? I am just absolutely swarming that bird with multiple shots, and that means that I'm going to get multiple hits. There's nothing worse than dropping a leg on a bird, right? So if I can break a wing, break legs, get multiple shots in the body, obviously would love to shoot them in the head. All those different things, especially on bigger birds, sage grouse, blue grouse, it's incredible how well this can knock them down. And where you're shooting those smaller shots at faster speeds, the energy and the, I guess, overall knockdown ability of that pellet is amplified. So small shot, as fast as I can safely push it, that's kind of my go-to here. So 7s are my preference for this. I am using Cheddite primers in this, and so again, this is a tested load. There's a lot of good information out there. These are loads that I've written down. I've got a little load log book that I keep up. If you're looking for some reloading manuals, a couple good places to start. These Advantage manuals, these are a great source of information. These are available from Ballistic Products. And then Lyman Reloading, really anybody that reloads is going to be familiar with some of the reloading stuff done by Lyman here. So that's a great source as well. So these are books you can buy, you can download them online, you can download different PDFs and stuff like that. But lots of good load information beyond what we're going to share today if you're interested in diving into more of that. So what we're going to do really first here is we're going to kind of just go A to Z through the process, show you how we load one of these up, and yeah, we'll go from there. So one important thing, I always like to make sure that anytime I reload, I use one of these little quick throw levers. I'm able to verify this. I've got a scale. That scale's been warming up for a period of time. I've already calibrated it, letting it warm up so I'm getting accurate information. A good scale is of the utmost importance. Do not reload if you don't have a good scale. You don't want to be over on anything. The charge bar, this is a Mech Junior. This charge bar is set up to be able to drop the right amount of shot in there. And so anyways, powder-wise, I'm talking in circles here, sorry. Powder-wise, I always make sure anytime I reload, when I'm done, I put it back into the container, safely store that in a place where it's not going to have an accident. And I always shake my powder up. I always just make sure there's no clumps. If there's been humidity or anything like that, I just want to make sure that that powder is good to go. So do that. We'll load that in there. And then I'm going to fill up my little shot cylinder here. I've already got some in here. Throw those up on the mech reloader. Always make sure you tip that backwards. Whoops. When you're doing that, so you don't spill stuff. And then I don't ever use the powder piece. Like I said, I prefer this. It's a little bit quicker. Well, it's a lot quicker because it's more accurate. Anytime I can do something accurately, efficiently, that's going to be the fastest way to do that. And these are okay, but you're playing with bushings, you're doing different stuff. None of it's necessarily ever exact. So these little charge quick throws are a great option as well. So I use one of those instead. So we're going to get everything loaded up here, and then we'll take you through all the individual stages of loading up the hole, the prep work, and some of the little steps that go into making sure that you get a nice reloaded hole. All right, so when I come over here, like I talked about, you have to have a good scale. Obviously loaded some of my powder in here, and so I just want to make sure that I'm getting the right amount of powder charge per hole. And so usually I'm going to do 5 to 10 of them, make sure that it's throwing consistently within plus or minus 0.1 grains. And then I know that I'm safe at that point. So the goal right now, we're looking for 29 grains of little gun powder to go in this particular load here. So I will zero this out and lift the lever up and drop it down. All right, so we got it right where it needs to be. Kind of a little bit of a breeze blowing in here. 28.9 to 29.1 is kind of what's fluctuating at, depending on how the wind's blowing in my garage right now. So I will just verify consistent throws there. I'm not going to base that off of one decision, really about where it needs to be. 28.9. We'll just verify that a couple times. 28.9, 28.8. Right there, not going to make a ton of difference. There's that little breeze right there. Yeah, 28, 29. Anyways, perfect. So that's throwing consistently there. We know what that charge is supposed to look like. And what I'll do from this point, now that I've verified that, I can move my scale off to the side. I like to keep as clean of a workbench as possible. It just helps me stay organized. When you got a bunch of clutter on here, it's easy to forget where you're at. Your phone rings. You don't want to double charge a hole. You don't want to do any of that nonsense. So make sure you're in a good mindset. You're thinking clear, and keeping a good clean workspace is really, really important. So if there's one thing you take away from this, make sure that you're doing that. So we got this set up where we need it to. We're going to hop in and reload a couple holes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I like using these reloading blocks because it allows me to kind of visually track the progress of a hole. So the first thing we need to do is we need to deprime and resize the brass on the bottom of them. So we're going to put that into the first stage. After I'm done with that, I turn this upside down so that I can see that it doesn't have a primer, because the next step, I'm going to have to obviously prime these and hop into it here. You're going to throw that on the press. Obviously, I need to push that down. A little squeeze, that'll size it up. Good to go. I always just give it a little visual inspection. A lot of times I'm throwing these in the back of my game bag, so there's birds and feathers back there, right? So you want to make sure you don't have any gunk or debris in there. And then I'll set that upside down like that so I can just track where that hole is at in the reloading process. All right, so next step, now that we have deprimed and sized these, we got to go and put new primers in. And like I said, it's nice to be able to visually track these. And as I come over here, I'm just going to take one of these primers, drop it in the reprime, get that pressed in there. I usually give it a spin just so everything's very concentric and pressed level. And then I'm able to turn that up, and so you can see, again, I'm just kind of visually progressing through that, and I know where I'm at with each individual hole. So now we got to prime all these bad boys, and then we're going to charge them up with some powder. All right, we got all 25 of these bad boys primed up. So like I said, I always just try to make sure I'm tracking progress, keeping a good clean workbench. Got those put away. Talk really quickly about just making sure that you've got a good primer seating. Like I talked about, I usually will press it down, spin it a little bit, press it again, make sure that everything's concentric. You're really looking for a nice flat top. Or bottom, whatever you want to call. You just want everything to be flat. You don't want it to be overly recessed in there, because the firing pin needs to reach it when you pull the trigger, and you don't want it to be so far out that you get, you know, it works its way out in your pocket, and then you got powder and a bunch of other crap going on. So you don't need to slam it down in there by any means, but make sure you give it a nice good push, and then you're going to have a well-seated primer, and that's really where everything starts, is when that goes bang. All right, so when I'm charging these or putting powder in them, how I'm tracking the progress of the hole again is I'm just taking a wad. After I throw powder in, I'm putting a wad on top of it. I'm not going to seat it. I'll do that later on the press, but that just makes sure as when I'm putting it in there, I'm not double charging something. So we've already calibrated everything on the powder side. We know that it's consistently throwing 29 grains plus or minus, basically 0.1. And so really with that, simply, actually I don't even need to have this because I trust my equipment. I've did a whole bunch of different throws. If you want to verify every single one of yours, please do that. I know my equipment. I've done this a bunch, so I'm not worried about it at all. But just make sure that you're getting good, consistent charges here. So I just hold that on the bottom here. I get my powder throw. You can see the powder's down in there, and I'm taking a hole, or excuse me, a wad, set it in on there, right? Take that up. Fits perfectly. Just make sure you're putting the hole in, or excuse me, the wad. Gall, can't speak today. Hold that over. Powder falls in. Wad. After we seat the wad, next you're going to want to go into the pre-crimp and the final crimp. Now, to give a little bit of context about those two steps, to get a really nice finished looking shell, you're going to want to kind of tune your press essentially to be able to accommodate the type of hole that you're using. This is set up to reload the Fiocchis and the Cheddites very, very well. If I was to throw a Winchester hole on here, I would need to change that depth. They are different enough. Yes, they're both 2 3/4 28 gauge holes, but they're different enough. So just make sure that you're taking the time to set everything up, because these final two stages will dictate the cleanliness and the overall look of the finished crimp. And that finished crimp is very important as well, because it needs to be seated firmly so that you're getting consistent pressures, which equates to consistency in velocities, consistent patterns, etc. Consistency is the name of the game. That's why I do all of these in different batches and progressive steps, to make sure that I'm being as accurate as possible when reloading. So we'll take a hole here, press that in here, get everything seated. I know that wad is now seated firmly. And then here at the top, charge the shot, bring it back. Now there is shot inside of the hole itself, as you can see here. Looks nice and beautiful. Then I'm going to slide this into the pre-crimp stage. Because these are already shot, I can kind of see where they've been pushed on a little bit. This Super Crown pre-crimper from Ballistic Products, very, very nice product, highly recommend it. The pre-crimp is very important because you don't want to, I don't push this down all the way. I really just want to start this to where it's starting to crown, my creases are strong, I've got that nice star shape, and then I'm going to allow the final crimp stage to get that pushed down. And so I just do that nice and slow. And then the same way that I talk about the primers, to get that good concentric crimp, I don't want any high points. I want everything very cylindrical, very, very even on top. Sometimes I'll spin them multiple times. Sometimes once or twice is just fine enough. And anyways, there you go. A little deep, but very, very nice looking shell that's going to shoot very well. We'll hop in and knock out a bunch more of them. All right, everybody, so that was kind of hopefully a down quick and dirty way to share one of my favorite early season loads. Again, I shoot just about everything with this particular load. Until we get into late season, when birds have a little bit more feather, maybe they're a little more educated, they aren't holding quite as well for the dogs. Kind of final specs on this shell, as I mentioned, this is a 1 ounce 28 gauge load. We're shooting 29 grains of little gun. We're using a heavy 28 wad in here, and then we have 1 ounce of shot. We're shooting number 7s. At the end of the day, the chronograph velocities that I've gotten out of this particular load average right around 1,300 feet per second, which really does make it a very, very versatile load for an array of upland game birds. This is one that I've had a ton of success with. It patterns well, it shoots great out of all my guns. Give them a try. Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't, please make sure to take time to subscribe. We're going to work really hard on this upland experience and just sharing a lot of information that we've been able to gather and experience after being, spending a lot of time in the field. So hopefully it's helpful to you, and we'll see you on the next one.